please like our video and subscribe to RotoWire. Then go to rotowire.com/pod for a free 10-day trial.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast. It is Sunday night, February 14th. I am Scott Jenstad, joined as always on Sunday nights by Jeff Erickson. If you please rate or review the podcast, that'd be fantastic. We do appreciate that. Helps people find the podcast. Does a lot of good things for us. If you like listening to us during the season, go ahead and give us a few, hopefully a bunch of stars there if you enjoy listening, and a nice comment would be a good thing too. Jeff, we're getting closer and closer to draft season. Stuff tends to be heating up. How are you?
Good. I've got labor on Tuesday. Mixed labor draft, 15-teamer.
Yeah, the 8 spot, right?
Perfect smack spot. Dab in the middle. I like that spot. You've converted me to loving the middle. And in this year in particular, at least like the first round, I love 8. I really love 8.
Tough to go wrong there. You get a pitcher you love or a hitter you love. It's you're not gonna get any drop off at 8. That's for damn sure.
Right. I mean, because I tend to view the hitters, there's this big 6 hitters and a big 2 pitchers there.
Okay. You don't have a big 3 pitchers?
I think Bieber is just behind that group.
Okay, that's
behind
fair.
Cole and DeGrom. But I mean, lest Dave comes after me on this one here, it's close. I have him as like 9 or 10.
Yeah, you don't want Dave coming after you.
No.
Well, big 6 and big 2, the math works pretty well there that you'll get one of them.
Yeah, I'll either get Trout or get Turner or I'll get Cole or DeGrom, and
hard to go wrong with anybody in that group.
Or somebody else unforeseen slips, which is just
very possible. I saw bets at 8 in the draft today, so it's just
really?
If you get some of those drafts, you get the 2 pitchers go 2-3 or 2-3-4 something like that, and someone's got to get pushed back.
Which draft was this?
It was an NFBC. It was either a DC or an online. I forget which one it was. I just saw the post with bets at 8.
Okay. Yeah.
And it was the NFBC looking board. So
gotcha.
But let's jump into this week. We're going to do a few news and notes here at the top. I got a couple questions for you, and then we're going to talk about last year's bums, a term that I'm sure has been used for a lot longer than that, but I know it from Gene McCaffrey in his Wise Guy Baseball magazine. Using it. It's like, guys who struggled the year before, their ADP goes way down, and what you do with them the next year. And it's a little more complicated even this year with, a 60-game season. So, how much if Matt Olson hit 195 over 6 months, I think that'd be different than hitting it over 2 months. I mean, it's still not good, but I think it's very different. We'll jump into that, but first some news and notes. Big news is from out here in LA with our land here. That Justin Turner signed with the Dodgers. He got a lot more money than I thought he was going to get. I thought he was going to be like a 2 for 22 or 2 for 24 kind of guy. He had 2 years for $34 million to stay with the Dodgers. There had been some rumors he was going to go to Milwaukee. They were going to have him play third base, but back in LA, I think you kind of know what we get with JT. Good batting average, some pop, but not a huge guy. But the interesting to me with Turner signing is what it does to everybody else in this lineup. You got Rios, you got Gavin Lux. How do you think that affects those guys?
It hurts Edwin Rios the most, I think, because I think he was penciled in to do a lot of third base. And we all knew that this was a possibility, right? This is probably one of 2 likely places from the land. The thought being, though, that the Dodgers, what they had spent on Bauer, that maybe they wouldn't, that took them out of Turner, but no, not so much. Apparently, Milwaukee's offer is in the same ballpark, too. But, I mean, it might even given him the 3rd year, but at the same time, it is the Dodgers where he's comfortable. It's L.A. where he's comfortable. I'm sure they have roots there now, so it's a lot easier to just stay home when you're getting similar money.
Yeah, and it seems like he likes it here and they like him here. I kind of figured that as long as the deals were anywhere near the same amount, he'd probably end up here, and here he is.
Yeah. So this is tied into the fact that we don't have any agreement on bringing back the National League DH too. Which
it seems like we might have kind of an agreement to not. I mean, it seems like the players are pretty set in their way of going with the CBA as it is right now, and I mean, they want the DH, but the owners want something for it, and I'm not sure the players are going to give that up right now. And it seems like once spring training gets going, it's going to be hard to push the season back, which is one of the things the owners wanted. So they could do a DH for expanded playoffs, but I think pushing the season back kind of goes away once you start like fully playing games in the spring, right?
Right, and it's tantamount, by the way, to the owners offering a quarter in exchange for $1.
As always,
right. And so I think. Yeah, I think we're done. I think that ship is sailing. I'm setting Wednesday as my drop dead date.
Is that like pitchers and catchers reporting day right there?
Kind of, yeah. That's basically it.
It varies by team, but yeah.
once that happens, I make all these adjustments. I change a lot of NL pitchers for the better, and then I reduce a lot of playing time. I already reduced Rios, by the way, though, because Turner, even with a DH, Turner signing cuts Rios by 20%. Because they still have extra guys. And you mentioned Lux. So Lux is probably going to end up like in some sort of platoon with Chris Taylor. Taylor could actually be the starter. In fact, Taylor's getting drafted slightly ahead, but also because Taylor can play the outfield also.
Yep.
But if Taylor plays the outfield, that means J.J. Pollock has nowhere to play.
Yep.
Unless, of course, Cody Bellinger's not ready for the start of the season.
It's a good problem to have overall, but in real baseball, it's a good problem to have. But fantasy-wise, it certainly affects him. You need at-bats. You need guys to play every day, and there's going to be Dodgers that are sitting, that are good players sitting each day.
Yeah, and that's kind of their thing. I mean, they lost Peterson. They lost Kike Hernandez. But Rios takes one of those spots, and Lux takes the other, and they're kind of in the same spot.
Yeah, suddenly they're just as deep as they were, and they re-signed Austin Barnes. I saw today they avoided arbitration. I shouldn't say re-signed, but they signed him to a 2-year deal, and him and Will Smith locked down that. How much do you think Will Smith's like a 60-40% of the time this year? I mean, they're going to play Barnes too.
I think it'll be close to 65-35 still.
All right.
I mean, Smith is so good.
Smith is very.
Kershaw loves himself some Barnes behind the plate, so that is part of it there. But and I don't know. I mean, we'll see who Bauer likes to throw to. That's obviously going to be a big deal.
Yeah.
But I think that's going to be. There's going to be a lot to kind of parse out. But you're right. They'll both play. But Smith's. I mean, look where Smith was hitting in the playoffs too. I mean,
that's true. That's a good point. I mean, he was hitting 4th and 5th in there, and that's a big deal.
Yeah, I think that's an indicator to them about where he belongs in the lineup and how often he belongs in the lineup.
I think the no DH is kind of a sneaky thing for NL catchers too. I think that you look at someone like Real Muto, who his days off would have been DH days. They would have been, it's just there's a lot of catchers that if they can hit, they could have had a day at DH or let the first baseman DH and they play first. It's just I think that DH is not just that extra spot, but like I think catchers lose a bunch of at bats too. The guys that can really hit like Real Muto and Smith that would have gotten DH at bats.
Yeah, and the hidden angle too is AL DHs that would have. Been able to play through it like last year. But now whenever they go to an NL park, you have to make that decision. Nelson Cruz isn't going to see the field.
I have to admit, I like not having to look for that last year. I love not having to worry about sitting Cruz on a weekend, something like that. And that's gonna be back too if they're assuming they don't change it.
It's not a migraine, but it's a tiny headache.
I mean, that's nine games a year right there. That's that's a decent chunk of the season. It's 5% of the season right there.
Right. And there are more DH only guys too. Now maybe they get it back in some cases here, but Chris Davis we know isn't going to see the field.
Let's hope not.
Either Chris Davis, really.
It sounds like they're pushing Calhoun to kind of the utility not getting every day at bat starts too. We talked about him last week as a guy that could be a bounce back, and I think he's going to struggle for at bats at least early on until someone gets hurt.
Or until they decide Chris Davis has nothing left.
It's possible too.
Yeah. I mean, but either way. And then you just look at all the, there's not too many other, significant DH onlys, but, Jordan Alvarez is another. He's not going to play the field. He's got two bad knees already.
Yeah, no, I mean that's a good point. It just there's that 3 series a year that you have to sit. So
yeah.
Another big signing, Mark Melancon. I don't know if it's big, but Mark Melancon signed with the Padres. Interesting here because we talked about Drew Pomeranz, we talked about Emilio Pagan. We haven't done a full closer podcast yet. I kind of want to wait till later in the year as these situations kind of flesh themselves out. But Melancon was good last year. I'm not a Melancon guy. His strikeout rate was like 14% last year. It wasn't very good, but 2.78 ERA, and he has that done it before. He had 11 saves last year. How do you think he fits in this Padres bullpen with Pagan and Pomeranz?
I mean, couldn't it be just like last year in Atlanta? I mean, where
I think so.
He gets saves and Pomeranz gets key innings, and Pagan, it really aces out Pagan. They also signed Kayla today too, so that's just even one more late inning arm. And they have so many young guys too that could fit in there too. It's crazy how deep they are now. But that's kind of that's similar to the Dodgers where they build this hyper deep bullpen there, especially because they're a little concerned about the starting pitching. I mean, they added three starters, but at the same time, we don't know what you're getting out of Lamet. We don't know what we're getting, when the prospects are going to be ready. So it's kind of tricky for them a little bit. So it behooves them to have a really deep bullpen. But I think it really kills Pomerantz shares. And I know I've got Pomerantz in one of my DCs, and I reached for him a little too soon.
Another guy there just muddles that situation even more. Just gives you, if a guy, it just lets you move guys around even more. And Melance's probably comfortable coming tonight. It'll be interesting to see what they do. I think you're right. I think Pagan kind of jumps out of that mix right now. I think they'll probably go Melanson and Pomerantz, and I don't love it. I'm a Melanson guy, but I kind of see that's what they do at least to start the year.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It might not finish that way. Pomerantz still could get 20. And if he gets 20 saves, he's still worth the investment, because assuming that he's the same quality, like ratio pitcher and strikeouts and all that, right. He still can be a value. So I'm not going to drop him entirely, but I did cut his saves back.
I wouldn't. I can't think you drop him yet with the ratios and Ks you're hoping for, and you're hoping. I think you want to see how that works out the first month of the season before you decide. It'd be hard to use him maybe that first month, but I think at least you want to hold him and maybe use him in the weeks you don't like your starters or you don't have a second reliever or something like that. But he becomes not an auto slot in there every week for sure.
Yeah, and what I meant by drop is not drop him from the roster, but drop his saves and all that. I dropped him down to 12 saves. Doesn't totally kill him, but he's definitely second chair to me. I have Melanson for 25, Pomerantz for 12.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. I take the under on Melanson and the over on Pomerantz if I had to bet it, but
right, same here. I just have to set a number.
You do, yeah, for sure. James Paxton signed with Seattle for 1 year, $8.5 million. I was a little surprised he ended up in Seattle with kind of how they're more rebuilding than going for it now with a 1 year deal. But he's obviously a guy that, only pitched 20 innings last year for the Yankees. Wasn't very good in those 20 innings, 6.6 ERA, but, gave up a lot of home runs. But 2019, he was pretty good. The last couple of years, he's been kind of a 3.8 guy. How do you feel about him moving to Seattle?
I think it's a good chance by Seattle. I know he lost velocity last year, and if that doesn't come back, then yeah, of course he's kind of toast. But if he is back, it's a 1 year deal. It's not that expensive. You get some better innings. You want to win when you're developing. Still, better to win while you're developing than lose. The other thing too is, because he's not that expensive, they could easily flip him at the deadline. He may not want that. He started his career in Seattle. He wants to be there, right. But I'm sure he wants to be on a contender too.
I weirdly thought he was a couple years younger than he is. I was a little surprised. I thought he was 29, 30. He's 32. You mentioned the drop in velocity, 95 down to 92. That is a pretty big jump. It'd be interesting to see how hard he's thrown in spring. I think that might make a big difference.
Yeah. And, I thought I read that he was topping out at 94. He was throwing 94 in front of scouts, but
all right.
It's one thing to do that. It's another thing to sustain it, especially when you're throwing pitches in anger and you're working on all your pitches and you're trying to get hitters out. Yeah. And then being able to do that. So we'll see.
And then coming back in the third and fourth inning and keeping that up. You're right. That'll be interesting. So his spring starts might be one of those guys that does impact his price as we go forward. Right. So a few other small signings. Rich Hill signed with the Rays. One of those guys that when he pitches, it has been really good, and his numbers have been good. His ERA was good last year in his 38 innings. His strikeout rate was way down, but I don't know. He's 40 years old. I don't know what you're going to get from him, but the Rays usually, do things very smartly. So I imagine his innings when he pitches will be pretty quality.
Yeah, but they won't be long. There's a quick hook there. Yeah. They also signed Colin McHugh, and I could see those two getting paired together, going lefty-righty on that. In which case, you almost want McHugh a little bit more in a Ryan Yarbrough sort of sense. Because Hill is one of the people that's least likely to be allowed to go five innings, or God forbid 6. Certainly not 3 times through the order. So, that's just the way the Rays manage their pitching. And they've added a number of guys. They added Archer. They added Waka. They've added all these, parts. Yes, they lost Morton and they traded away Snell. Well, they didn't lose Morton. They chose to part ways with Morton. Yeah. But they're trying to tackle this problem with volume and hope that maybe basically hope 2 or 3 of these guys really work out, on the cheap and manage them properly, if you will. And that they feel like they've got that edge, and they probably do have a little bit of an edge doing so.
Yeah, the Hill velocity drop is one that jumps out to me a lot more than Paxton's because Hill's 40. His strikeout rate dropped way down. I don't think this is going to work out. I want no part of this, but okay. I'd probably bet against Rich Hill in the past and lost, but I don't know. I think your point about the Rays using him in small bursts is important for fantasy, and I just think that the velocity drop and the K drop and being 40 years old, I'm fully out right now. Yeah,
and now I think it changes a little bit if they use an opener in front of him. They go Waka then Hill.
Yeah, it could work.
But as Todd was saying, Todd Zola and I were doing the XM show today, and he was saying Hill seems like one of those guys that needs to know when he's pitching though too.
That I don't know that, but I would assume that that's something that he's probably comfortable. He would rather be knowing what he's doing. And you think he would want to start games rather than coming in, but
he's a fragile hothouse flower, basically.
He is. And a super blister can come back at any point just to upset all of us.
Right, exactly.
Couple other minor signings. Asdrubal Cabrera signed with the Diamondbacks. The A's signed Yusmeiro Petit and Sergio Romo. I don't think that moves any needles. I don't think Romo really factors in the closer mix, even though they need a righty there, but I still think Lou Trevino would be ahead of him. I'll be kind of ill if the A's use Romo as their closer, if we're being honest.
I can actually kind of, you don't even have to squint to kind of see it already. But
you don't have to squint very hard to see it. You can see that coming in, but I don't know. 37 hasn't been very good he's been okay the last couple of years, but I think the glory days of Sergio Romo and his slider being fully wiped out, I think are past.
Yeah, I agree. I still think this is an unpopular opinion apparently, but I think Diekman's kind of the guy. The guy they said is their most likely to the internal candidate that's most likely to close. That's what they said in the past. I don't think that's changed. I mean, I know a lot of people like Wendelken. I like him too. You mentioned Trevino as an option. Romo and Petit signing hurts Trevino.
I think it's Diekman to start too.
Yeah.
I don't think he holds it, but I think it's Diekman to start.
You just don't. Now, why doesn't he hold it? You think he's not that good, or do you think it's because he's lefty, or?
I think a little bit lefty, and I think he walks just way too many guys to hold down that role.
That's fair. I mean, I don't like walks either. No.
I mean, you look at he hasn't had a walk rate under 11% in 6 years. It's not like it was a bump last year. Last year was 14%. It was high, but year before was 13.8. Year before that was 12.8. It's just I can't see a guy that with the lefty thing's going to hurt him. A couple outings you're like, oh, maybe move him into situational. But I mean, a walk rate over 5 walks per 9 last 3 years. I just don't think that works in the closer role long term.
I didn't realize it was that bad last year, to be honest with you. I know the strikeouts were so good, the ERA obviously was so good, but
when your strand rate is 96.9%, it tends to make up for some stuff. But
sure.
I actually didn't think so either. And I looked at him when I was doing something on closers earlier last week, and I was a bit surprised just how high the walk rate was consistently too.
Yeah, me too. So that is interesting to see that they added more veterans there to give themselves. Well, Petit was already there before, so it's not like it's like
yeah.
He's an ad necessarily.
Romo just kind of slots in the Joaquin Soria role is kind of my thought.
I kind of think the way they're positioning themselves, though, we may not see Puck right away. We may not see Dalton Jeffries for a really long time. Adding Fires back. Granted, someone's going to get hurt. People get hurt. That's what they do.
Especially on the A's.
Yeah, I mean, Manaea is a guy we were kind of shying away from last year because of his velocity drops and all that. So, yeah, it's not that far-fetched to see any of these guys kind of get dropped down at some point.
Yeah, I think Manaea is just a guy. I think he's going to eat some innings and be okay, but fantasy-wise, I think he's just a guy.
Okay.
So let's jump into one other thing I would ask you about before we get into last year's bums. They came out this week with the deadening the ball thing in MLB and all this. Is it affecting your projections? Are you actually believing MLB? Are you dropping everybody down? Do you kind of see how it works out? How are you handling that?
I believe it's going to happen. See, MLB got caught. They got, and I had Sarah Sanchez on Thursday's podcast, and she talked about Dr. Meredith Will's study, which was going to be this big story in SI. And so MLB caught wind of it and preempted this story by leaking the news to Rosenthal and Saris. And so that's how it came out. So I think it's absolutely true in the past that they've doctored with the ball, and that they really are intending to deaden the ball. Now, do I believe that they have the precision that they'd like to be able to do so? No, I don't.
Right. Yeah. Was the ball a little bit smaller too? Is that what they were saying?
Yeah, and lighter.
Which seems really weird for a pitcher, to have to get used to. I don't know. I'm not enough of a major league pitcher. If I pick up a ball, I probably can't tell the difference. But if you throw 100 pitches every 5 days and you've been throwing for your whole life, you think you would notice that, right?
Yeah. And the thing is, I don't think it's that much smaller, and it might even just be the seams a little smaller too. And I know the pill, I believe, is a little smaller and lighter though. And it's, and it was really represented well graphically that what seems to us to be a very small change is something that it's never been in that range in the past. So it's like, oh, that's what it was last year, and now I think they're trying to get rid of that. So.
Yeah, it seems like MLB is doing a lot of crap right before the season starts. it seems like there's just no plan. There's no prep. There's no why haven't they been figuring this out the last 4 months? It's frustrating.
The nefarious argument is they want to cut down on homers before the CBA. But
how does that affect? I mean,
well, because assuming that maybe smaller incentive I guess incentive clauses don't get fulfilled or something like that. I don't know.
Doesn't that then fill every pitcher's incentive clause though?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, right. I'm not really connecting too many dots here. I'll grant you that.
It just seems like this should be something that should have been figured out in December, not a week before pitchers and catchers report.
Yeah, that's kind of how they roll, though, too.
It really is. I mean, the fact that the DH thing hasn't been figured out is just the whole thing's crazy. I mean, you got guys that are literally waiting to see if they can sign based on there being 15 extra spots, and they can't do it. It's wild.
Yeah, and that's the thing is baseball doesn't view it as something to be figured out. It's something to be negotiated, something so they can get their precious expanded playoffs. Everything is tied to that. They've sold advertising for that already.
It's wild. It's gonna be an interesting offseason. I think it's gonna be a maddening offseason negotiation next year. I think it's gonna be really the news is just gonna suck every day.
It might.
It's gonna be.
Might.
And they'll take it down to the wire either way. If there's a strike or a work stoppage or whatever, it'll go down to the wire either way. They always do that.
Past the wire, in fact, I would guess, because wires can be moved.
So let's jump into some players for this year. But first, a note from our sponsor, AutoNew. AutoNew Fantasy Baseball is the next level fantasy baseball challenge you've been looking for. Experience a year-round dynasty competition with deep rosters, accumulate prospects to lead your team to the future, or to move for a superstar at the trade deadline. Keep your baseball mind engaged in the offseason with trades and arbitration. Learn more about why everyone who plays AutoNew Baseball becomes addicted at AutoNewBaseball.com. That's AutoNew, OTTONEU, baseball.com. AutoNew, better fantasy baseball. Jeff, you actually play in AutoNew leagues, yes?
I do. I share a team with Peter Shanky, actually, as a matter of fact.
Oh, nice. Are you guys any good?
We're okay. Sometimes it's a fun game. It requires a lot of attention because it's daily moves. I'm sure there are formats where it's weekly, but for our league, it's daily moves. Free agents, though, there's a 3 or 4 day period where you bid on them. It's silent bidding, our blind auction, I should say, not silent, but it could be silent too. I don't know.
It's probably silent also.
But and it's 40-man rosters. It's a fun game. And it's a fun game, but it requires some attention, and we don't always give it that attention that it needs.
Yeah. So let's jump in and talk about some last year's bums as we're hashtagging Gene McCaffrey once again, our good friend. Guys who struggled last year, struggled in 2020, but we're high up in the ADP, or at least higher in the year before. I'm gonna start. I'm gonna do mostly guys that are still in the top 200. I've got one at the end that I want to ask you about if you think he's fully washed and done, but we'll get to him. I want to start with Alex Bregman, and Bregman is a confusing one because we have not only the short 2020 season, but also the trash can stuff, and if that impacted him last year, if he didn't have that, if he didn't the in-game video stuff, whatever it may be. But last year Bregman hit 242, 6 home runs, 0 stolen bases after a year where he hit 41 home runs and had 122 runs, 112 RBI in 2019. K rate went up a little bit, but still really good for a guy who has pop at 15%, but never been a big hard hit guy. Never been over 40%. Went down to 33.6%. Barrel rate the last 3 years has gone 7.4, 4.7, 3.9. He was 23rd percentile or something last year. So not a guy who hits the ball a ton, but does enough to get it done. Obviously, it was huge in 2019. ADP was 42 last year, or 42 this year. Was 20 last year. He was a first, second round guy, early second round guy, right in there last year.
Right.
The speed's big to me. He had 17 steals, then 10, then 5, then 0. Sprint speed has dropped a little bit. He's at 56th percentile. Where do you fall on Bregman now that he's a late third rounder and a 15-teamer?
I'm not getting him yet. I've got him in the 60s. Couple of things. You mentioned the StatCast profile. If he's at the 25th percentile in hard hit rate, what do you think a dead ball is going to do with him?
It's true.
I think that's something, and Liz and I were kind of arguing about him a little bit there. I know he hit 41 homers a couple of years ago, but if that's with the happy fun ball, then is that legit? Is that real? And that's the thing we always have to battle with there. Is that real? What sort of things can we deal with there? The batting eye is great. That's nice. It'll help him recover some of his batting average. He's not going to run it all. The sprint speed's just okay. And this is a team that doesn't like to run. And
that's a good point too.
Granted, he had a hamstring injury last year. That had something to do with it. But in 2019, he was healthy. Played 156 games, only had 6 attempts. Was 5 for 6. That's good. But unless Dusty Baker says, I want you running more, and he might, because he's a little old school on that, and it's not even a pejorative here. I promise you it's not. Yeah, so that could return a little bit, but usually when speed goes away, it doesn't come back.
Yeah, he's one of those guys where I usually really like last year's bums, and usually people I target, and I saw that he dropped in 22 spots in ADP. I'm like, I'm going to like that, but I don't know. As I got deeper into it, I kind of felt the same with you with the 41 home runs. Might be a little bit of happy fun ball guy who really benefited from that, and not one of those guys who's going to hit any ball, whether it's dead or not, hard enough that it's not going to matter. I mean, someone like Giancarlo Stanton or Joey Gallo we're going to talk about later, like when they hit it, it's going to go out no matter what. I wonder if Bregman is a guy that really benefited from that Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think he did. And, it's happy fun ball plus Crawford boxes equals 41.
Yep, for sure. I mean, and the Crawford boxes will still be there, but I just think there's guys in that range. Like if you're looking in that range, I would take Anthony Rendon every day over Bregman.
Yeah, I would too. I think there's like a lot more. I think I'll tell you. I think there's a lot of third basemen I take over. Maybe not a lot, but yeah, I think you could make a case. I think I take Arenado over him.
Yeah, and then you got Rendon, Bregman, and Devers are all like back to back in ADP. It's kind of wild. There's 3 third basemen right there.
Right. I think I go Devers, Rendon, Arenado all over him. I think you make a case for Kevin Biggio. Now, granted, Biggio, you're counting on him stealing some, and batting average is going to hurt you with him. So I could see why you'd say no to that. But and then Suarez, I mean, he's definitely going to hurt your batting average. He also doesn't run, but if he's a safer power bet, especially if the ball isn't as juiced, I think that Bregman gets hurt by that more than Suarez. I don't know. I think you make a case that for those, it's an either or almost.
In that range, I'm just having myself a hard time taking Bregman. We mentioned Rendon and Devers, and George Springer's right after Bregman, Marcelo Zuna's right after Bregman, Starling Marte's right after Bregman. I take all 3 of those guys too. So I don't see many scenarios unless Bregman really slips where I end up picking him.
Yeah, I think he needs to fall closer to 60. End of the 4th in a 15er, 5th round in a 12.
And I don't think he's getting there.
I agree.
Yeah. Next guy is someone who's fallen even further is JD Martinez. His ADP last year was 26.2. When I use 2020 ADP, I'm using the 38 main event drafts just to give everybody a context there. Right now, in the last 3 weeks, his ADP is 95. So he's fallen way down. Hit 213 last year, so for good reason. 237 plate appearances, played the whole year, the whole shortened year. 7 home runs. He's a guy that was so amazingly consistent before that. He had over 300 4 straight years. He had 45, 43, and 36 home runs 3 years prior, 100 RBIs each of those years. What do you do with Martinez off a 70-spot ADP drop this year?
I'd probably take him a little bit. One of the things that, our outlook for him starts off with his complaints about the lack of in-game video. Yep. A lot of things was made out of the ball, and justifiably, but the other news that came out is there is in-game video this year. It happens to be on players' iPad. They're got iPads that they're providing in the dugout that are going to be set so you can't steal signs from, apparently.
So you can't go back and hang out in the video room, but you can at least watch all the in-game stuff.
So that makes me wonder, the Red Sox were one of those teams. So were the Astros. Obviously the Astros were, but the Red Sox also got caught cheating. How much of Martinez's success was attributable to that? I mean, he broke out first with the Tigers. He also was amazing in Arizona. So it seems less likely that that's the reason why, unless every team had a way of stealing signs. But I'm kind of skeptical that that's true. I think it's more likely, though, that video plays a bigger role than we realize with a lot of these hitters. Javi Baez was another one that, it was mentioned that missed out on the video too. Yelich.
He's coming up next, by the way.
Yeah. I think that... I think that there's some bounce back potential. I think the lineup is worse than it used to be. That doesn't help. One of the things we're always counting on is those sweet counting stats with being in the middle of that Boston lineup. Well, that might be less valuable space than it's been in previous years. It's still a great park to hit in, but in terms of like guys on base in front of him, might not be as fruitful. And
his StatCast stuff dropped, but it's still pretty good. I mean, his hard hit rate was 41.6% last year. It was 45% 5 years in a row before that, over 45%. Barrel rate was still 11%, 73rd percentile, lower than his career average still. Max exit velo was the lowest in 6 years. Average exit velo fell under 90 miles for the first time. So it fell, but it wasn't bad. It wasn't like, we look at Bregman and like it's below average.
Right.
He got killed by fastballs, which is kind of wild. He had a 576 slugging percentage in 2019 on fastballs, 372 last year, and a 186 batting average. Like fastballs ate him up, which is probably the one thing that concerns me a little bit. Like, he's 33 now. Maybe he wasn't catching up to stuff. Maybe he's guessing. I don't know, whatever. Maybe it's the in-game stuff. But ADP 95 is the 7th round. Depending on where my team is kind of set up, if I need pop in the 6th round, I'm a full go on Martinez. I like buying in on this one.
Yeah. One other thing, and this is also driving his drop, though, too, is he's DH only this year.
Yep.
And unlikely to go back.
It depends, I guess, what they do in the outfield, but I think unlikely to go back is a good way to put it.
Yeah. I mean, maybe he gets there, but because of the lack of NLDH, but it's like, because who's Hunter Renfroe to stand in his way when they go to an NL ballpark, unless they just think that he can't play defense anymore. So we'll see.
I'm looking. It looks like he played 6 or 7 games. I think he just missed it.
6 games. He played 6 games in the outfield.
All right. Yeah, he just missed it then. That's
for
tough.
NFBC at least he did. If your league, I think Tout Wars has a lower threshold.
All right.
Because we used to be 15 as opposed to 20. So I think that probably translates to 5 as opposed to 7. So I think in Tout you can use him in AL Tout. I can use him in the outfield.
NFBC is 7. You said, right?
It is.
Okay. Yeah. If he was an outfielder, you think his ADP would be like 10 to 15 spots earlier? A little more?
I think something like that. Yeah.
Okay. So you think it's about a round?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. If I get a spot where I'm in round 6 and I've taken a couple pitchers, I have a speed guy or something, I think he works really nice in the 6th round to get some power. I like the comeback there.
I can see it.
You mentioned Javier Baez. ADP last year was 35. This year's up to 75, 74 to be exact. Hit 203 last year. 8 home runs, 3 stolen bases, and 235 plate appearances. So played the whole 60-game season. The year before, he was 29 and 11 home runs and stolen bases. Hit 281. The year before that, he was obviously even better, and he was end of first round kind of pick. K rate's always been an issue with Baez, but last year it was a big issue again. It spiked up to 32%. The walk rate never good, but it fell to a career low of 3%. He was 75 to 7 Ks to walks last year. Yeah. Like it was a huge.
I had him in an on base league.
Oh yeah, that's not helping your cause right there.
No.
Hard hit dropped, but still pretty good at 40%. Barrel rate dropped. So there's some stat casts that fell off too. I think a big thing with Baez is whether he's going to run again. He was 21 steals, then 11. The last year was 3 in the shortened seasons. Maybe you project that out to 7 or 8. I don't know. His whiff rate and his walk rate are both bottom 5%. That's tough to stomach right there.
Yeah, and the walks. I mean, the Ks have always been there too. It's just they got more extreme. That's the problem. It was reminiscent of his rookie year. Well, his rookie year was crazy bad, 41.5%. But it's been climbing too. It was 25.9 in 2018, 2019, 27.8. It seems like it's just trending that way and not just a blip. Granted, it was 2 months. They didn't have video. All that's true. Lack of hard hit rate is very concerning. I chose not to re-keep him in XFL, and that was an on-base league. And the way XFL works is player salaries go up $3 every year. If you got him as a minor leaguer, if you draft him in the major league auction, it's $5 every year. So that adds up over time. So getting rid of one of your +3s is always a little bit of a painful experience. I chose not to re-up on him. I think at 75, I'm probably there. I think that's about right. But again, if you're doing that, just realize what you're risking in your batting average. But there were so many batting average extremes last year, especially to the negative, and I think a lot of that gets leavened out a little bit by a full season.
Yeah, I don't think you play a whole season, Javier Baez ends up hitting 203. But the strikeout to walk is concerning. The one thing you do have going for him is he's still only 28. Like, I don't think there's no kind of aging curve coming for him or anything like that. I don't think I worry about that. But I think I agree with you. I think 75 is about the right price. It probably depends what I have there, but the 5-6 turn, I think it's about a fair price.
Yeah.
Let's jump into a pitcher since we've done 3 hitters. Chris Paddock was everybody's sweetheart last year. ADP was 41.3. It is 70 spots down now to 111.2. 4.37 ERA, 1.22 WHIP last year in 59 innings. The year before, he was 3.33 ERA in 140 innings his rookie year. K rate fell; it's down to 23.7%. The crazy thing with him is everything got smashed. He had a 47% hard hit rate and 11% barrel rate, which are both bad numbers for a pitcher. He did drop his fly ball rate with nearly 10%, so maybe getting more ground balls there. I don't know. You look at the StatCast numbers, and there's a whole heck of a lot of blue on his screen, which you don't want, except for the walk rate, which is good. But the rest of the stuff it's not great when you look at it. Obviously, he's a young guy. He throws hard. He throws 94, but he's a two-pitch guy right now. He's fastball changeup 88% of his pitches. I'm having trouble with this one. The price seems at 111 seems like kind of jumps out. He's like, that's a guy I want there. But then you look closer, and I don't know anymore.
I read, and I wish I could attribute where. I do this all the time. But I saw something on Twitter talking about how his four-seamer was just a little off, and they did some reviewing after the season and saw how he was just off, and it's just a little adjustment because he was getting killed on his four-seamer, just getting crushed on it. I think he had 10 homers off that four-seamer alone.
658 slugging against it.
Yeah, and if that's one of your two pitches,
right, that's
a problem. Two-pitch pitching. I mean that is definitely a thing, and I probably should spend more time figuring that out. But sometimes you read all these other stories. Well, he just simplified it for these two pitches, and they throw it 8. He threw it 8. He threw those two the 80% of the time, and it worked out great. It was someone that were talking about that just earlier today, I think. I wish I remember.
There's a good example, like Tyler Glasnow does that, and it works really well.
Yeah.
But then you think about Chris Archer, and you're like, he never developed that third pitch, and it caused him problems. So I don't know if Paddock has quite the nastiness of Glasnow's stuff, but there's guys that make that work and guys that don't make it work.
Yeah. I mean, his backsliding is one of the reasons why the Padres felt like they had to go out and get aces. I'm kind of betting on a rebound. I'm there I think this price is a pretty good price. The team is going to be so good behind him.
Yep.
Good offensively and defensively. It's going to be a better bullpen this year too, so they won't blow leads behind them. That helps a little bit. Inherited runners have a worse chance of scoring. I'm probably going back in on him, and I'm keeping him.
I always like a guy who doesn't walk people too. I think that's I really like that, but I just I don't know. It's funny. He was so good that year before, and I think maybe he just. It's one of those guys that you wonder if in a full season it would have got ironed out. Like you mentioned the fastball and all that. You wonder if it would have got ironed out after the first 2 months. They would have figured something out. And he would have kind of hit a hot streak, or he's a tough guy to figure. But I think I agree with you. I think the price is a spot where if I need a pitcher there, I'm willing to take the risk.
Yeah.
Let's jump back into hitters. Keston Hiura's ADP is 70.2. His ADP last year, he was another guy that everybody loved. It was 48.5 coming off the huge 2019 where he not only had 19 home runs in the majors, but he had 19 home runs in the minors too. He had 38 home runs that year. Also had 9 steals in 84 games in the majors. Was bad last year. Hit 212. Did have 13 home runs, but 3 stolen bases in 246 plate appearances. Hard hit rate crashed. It was 48% the year before. Everybody loved that. And now he's down to 39.5. K rate was 34.6%. That's an ugly number.
Worse than the National League. Actually, worse than Baez even. Only people that were worse with the number of bats he got were Evan White and Miguel Sano, I think. It was really bad. And you add in that he's a terrible defender. His defense is so good, they signed somebody else to play second base so they can move him to first. They have Vogelback, who, this is a team that could all of a sudden really needs the DH. So they can accommodate both bats in line. If they don't get a DH, I mean, you could see Hiura sitting some, and he's on the wrong side of a platoon. If that's
the thing, right? You get like a nasty righty. You're like, well, let's just play Vogelback today, and Hiura can come and pinch hit in the 8th inning, and that's fine for the Brewers, but not fine if you're taking him in the 5th round.
Yeah. I mean, we could be wringing our hands for nothing. He could end up fixing things and becoming the stud he was, but remember, he got sent down in his rookie year.
Yep.
And he was actually hitting well then. His defense is 0. I mean, that's one of the things that's really hurts him a lot. A lot of time, we don't care about defense except it does dictate playing time, and I think that's a case here. The other thing is, I mean, he's got to run more. He doesn't run a ton either anymore, and that's a little bit of a concern too. So yeah, I've got him hitting him bouncing back to 244 this year, but that's not great.
That's not great.
And I have him running just a little bit. I have him running I'm getting to 12 stolen bases, but
I think that's fair.
Yeah. He was a darling last year. He's not this year. And I think his drop is appropriate, and I might even drop him a little bit more.
You mentioned the K rate, who was higher than him. His swing strike rate was 20.2%, second highest in baseball. Believe it or not, the guy who's higher than him is actually drafted higher than him. You have any idea who it is? I would not have gotten this right.
Is it Yelich?
It's not. It's Luis Robert. Was the only guy that was higher.
Sense. Yep.
But he's a guy that's in the middle of the third round, so that's a little concerning there too when you dig into Robert a little bit. The swing and miss is real with him too.
Yeah. And I just remember his horrific slump at the end of the season last year.
Yeah, that's there's some interesting guys up top there. Another one that was another darling last year was Matt Olson. Hit 195 last year. His ADP was 62, so he's kind of a fourth, fifth round turn guy. Was moved up a lot in the preseason. He's at 90 right now, so at the 6-7 turn to 15 teamer. 195 last year. Did hit 14 home runs, had 42 RBI, so the power numbers were there. But 195 and 245 plate appearances definitely hurts your batting average significantly. He had 267 the year before, 36 home runs in only 127 games. The year that we all jumped off him because he had the hamate bone injury in the Japan series. We're like, that means no power for a year.
Right.
Clearly that was not the case. But the concern with me, and what I liked with Olson, is that his strikeout rate was, for a power hitter, wasn't horrible. It was 24.7% and 25% in 2018 to 2019. Big bump up last year to 31.4%. I watch a lot of A's games. He was pressing. He looked as bad as the 195 average puts him out to be. When he connected, he had a home run, but he earned that 195. He wasn't hitting rockets at people, but hard hit rate was still good. He hits a lot of home runs still, 46%. The barrel rate dropped, but still 12.8%, a really big number. Swinging strike was up a little bit, but only 13.5%. We talked about Hero with that 20%. So Olson was nowhere near that range.
Right.
The thing you get is you get zero speed. So you want to get some batting average. You don't want to give up two categories completely to get the power with Olson. But
right.
Where do you fall on Matt this year? I know you and I think both liked him last year, and I'm curious where you are with him this year.
I liked him, but I didn't like him as much as the crowd. And then he fell in my main that I did with Shu, and I was like, hey, I got my windfall here. And yeah, it cost me a closer, I think. And yeah, I didn't miss that at all. But where did I fall? Okay, it's interesting. In the last 2 weeks of the NFBC, these three guys are all next to each other. Max Muncy, Matt Olson, Paul Goldschmidt. Give me Goldie over on those three. I understand I'm giving up some power, but I'll take the chance that he might get some power back, and I know I'll get batting average. Whereas the other two are crushing my batting average, unless I'm really like average heavy up top, and I feel like I need the power gamble. But I don't think I'm going to. I think Olson at 89, I might not even take there. I might. I mean, I guess it kind of depends how much I need power. Anthony Rizzo's sitting there at 99, and I think I'm just as okay with Rizzo as I am with Olson.
Muncy's an interesting one. I think everything goes so well for the Dodgers, you don't really notice when things go badly. He hit 192 last year.
Yeah.
But none of his numbers changed. His strikeout rate went down. His walk rate stayed the same. His hard hit rate was a little bit down, but still really good. His barrel rate went up, and his BABIP dropped 80 points. He feels like a guy to me that would have corrected if the season was longer than 2 months.
I'd agree with that. In fact, I'd probably go Goldie, Muncy, then Olson. And then Olson versus Rizzo is pretty close.
Yeah, I go Olson over Rizzo just because I think the power upside is a significant difference there.
Probably so.
It's probably a team build thing. How your average and how your power looks at that point. I think it's a very, very dependent on how your team looks so far.
100% agree.
Yeah. Goldie really dropped the strikeout rate last year, which I liked, but the power wasn't there. But he's just a guy. He hit 304 last year still. Second year with the new team. I'd probably have to go. Goldie, Muncy would be kind of team dependent for me too, I think. But I do like Muncy for the bounce back.
Yeah.
Let's jump to a pitcher now. Patrick Corbin, who was suggested by your colleague Peter Schenke as someone we should talk about. 3.15 ERA in 2018, 3.25 in 2019, 1.18 WHIP in 2019. Last year, 4.66 ERA, 1.57 WHIP in his 65 innings. Now that's only 11 starts, so he's one of those guys that how much do we take the whatever it was 60 something starts, 66 starts in 2018, 2019 versus 11 now. But you look at the K rate. The K rate drop was 38.8% in 2018, 28.5% in 2019, really good numbers, and then 20% last year, 20.3%. Velocity dropped off too, 91.9 miles an hour to 90 miles an hour. Hard hit rate jumped to 44%. Line drive rate jumped. He was definitely getting hit hard. And you wonder if it was the velocity. You wonder what was going on. Swing strike rate crashed from 14% to 10.6%. There's a lot of numbers that were really bad last year. He's one of those guys, like, how much do you factor in those 11 starts?
I'm concerned. And, he threw a lot of innings in 2019. Obviously, it was a stud in the playoffs, too, in the World Series itself.
Yep.
That may have something to do with it. And if another year allows him to regain that velocity, because he's had some variance in his fastball before, but the fastball sets up other pitches, right? So if he's not got that velocity, I'm concerned. I'm probably a little bit I'm probably a little bit lower on him than the pack. I not a ton. I'd probably say I'm 2 to 3 rounds behind where he's at, which is possible.
That's a ton at that point, though. That's a lot at that point.
Not really. I mean, you see guys at 130 go 160 all the time, I feel like.
Yeah, I guess that's true. He's far enough down there. You're probably right. That's I thought his ADP was a little bit higher, but 137 or something like that.
Yeah. And it's because of where it used to be. I mean,
yeah.
So it's one in the last 2 weeks. It's 135.87. So.
Well, he was last year. He was about 60 or so, somewhere in there.
Right. So I mean that's already a drop. I mean, and I'd still need to be closer to the bottom end of his range. Actually, the bottom end of his range is 167. So yeah, chances are I'm probably not going to get him because I think like, what if there's another level below this in terms of strikeouts, in terms of velocity? Then then it could get really ugly.
Yeah, it's funny. You look at his game log. He had the 11 starts. 3 of them were bad. So 3 of them really he had a 7 earned run game and then 2 5 earned run games. The rest of it was 3 or fewer. But there's a lot of there's two strikeout games in there, 2 3 strikeout games in there. Mm-hmm. So it gets tough. And that sinker or the slider was so good in 2019. The whiff rate was 52%. It was 38% last year, which is still really good, but not that massive strikeout pitch that you kind of carry the other pitches. So I don't know. And pick 135. It's probably right about where I am with him. I think it's about the right price.
Yeah, I've seen people in keeper leagues offering him up. I always think that it's smart people too that are doing that. Like I play in a score sheet league with Nate Stevens, and he's a really good score sheet player, and he's offering him up in these leagues. That to me is a sign. Usually, you want you're not looking to get rid of players like that if you think they're going to bounce back. So.
Do you go Corbin or Sixto Sanchez at the same ADP?
Probably Sixto. I'd go with his teammate Pablo Lopez over both of them. I
go Sixto over the whole group. I love Sixto Sanchez.
Yeah, I think 2022 Sixto is where I'm at, but I think I probably prefer Pablo a little bit more than Sixto this year. And I think I take Alcantara over all 3 as tops of the 3 of those Marlins.
That does not surprise me. You are the Alcantara guy.
No, James Anderson is the Alcantara guy, by the way.
Oh, you're just the secondary Alcantara guy?
I'm the Alcantara guy apprentice.
I love Sixto because he throws hard, throws 3 pitches, and doesn't walk anybody. And at that age, I just love that profile.
That's a pretty good profile. Marlins could be sneaky still. I mean,
they have some fun pitching games for sure.
Yeah, they do that, and they don't have tons of star hitters, but I think they've got some credible bat at every position really. And actually some superfluous at bats. So they're another team that actually gets hurt by the DH. You would think, the Marlins, whatever, they're not spending any money. They actually have extra bats right now. Yeah,
they could. I mean, that rotation at least 1 through 4 is kind of fun.
Yeah, it is. If Rogers pans out, that could be a fun team. They've got more on the way too in the farm system.
If Sixto's ADP stays about 140 where it is now, I will have him on a lot of teams.
All right, there you go. Bold statement by Scott Jenstad. Bold statement from a bold man.
Love Sixto. I picked him up last year. I bid heavily on him. I love his profile in every way. So he's
kind of struggled a little in September.
He did. He kind of gassed out a little bit, but I don't know. I'm a big fan. I think the future is extraordinarily bright for him.
Okay.
You mentioned Anthony Rizzo. We talked about Javier Baez. What the heck do we do with their other well-known teammate, Chris Bryant? ADP last year dropped to 73.5. It's down to 130 now. So you're in a spot where that's the 9th round right in there. hit 204 last year, 4 home runs. Did he really? How many RBIs? Did he really have 11 RBIs? Did I misprint that?
No, you did not misprint that. And like a lot of them came in the last week too.
Good
I
Lord,
think he was like deep into September with 4 RBI, I think.
I remember making fun of that stat for a while, and then he had like a 4 or 5 RBI game and kind of shut us up. But still 11 RBI on the season. Yeah, he had
6 the last 2 days of the season.
There you go. That's it. So he had 5 RBIs going to the last 2 days of the season. That's insane. That's almost impossible.
He dealt with so many different injuries last year.
He did.
And just the weird start to the season. You remember all the acrimony about, in spring training, he had that grievance that was finally heard and, he lost that. I think he's like super motivated this year. Still gets the third and outfield qualifications. I think I'm there for him. I not only do I think I've already taken him once in a DC. He's like third baseman 16. That doesn't square with any of his past value. It's not like he's old. He's 29.
He's 29.
I think that there's a really good chance of bounce back. Again, RBI still might be an issue because if he's hitting second in the order, that's still a problem. If he's hitting fourth or fifth, of course it's different. But I still think he's a good hitter, good player. Might get traded, and when he gets traded, he might pull like a Matt Holliday on someone, just to use an example that might be painful.
Why would you do that? That's horrible.
Well, I know. I'm sorry.
What a mean thing to say on a Sunday night.
I know. I didn't mean to do it like to hurt you really too much, but it was the first name that came to my head.
I like that. Didn't hurt you too much.
Yeah. I mean, I knew it would have that effect, but the goal wasn't to hurt you. It was more just trying to think of a guy that wants to stick it to his old team after getting dealt. And I think he's that.
So he's a guy that StatCast doesn't love either. The hard hit rate and barrel rate's kind of fallen for like 6 years in a row. Last year was 31.9% and 5.5% barrel. Like there's a 2018, 2019 was really close, but pretty much steadily fallen for 6 years. Hard hit rate's been under 32% for the last 3 years. So he's not a guy that StatCast loves. I get that the talent's there. He had won MVP. He's had some really good years. I kind of I think the price is about right where I'm. I think that there's enough upside in there that he maybe works the price, but you look deeper at the StatCast stuff, and it kind of like a little bit like Bregman we mentioned earlier. It doesn't look great, especially when you look at the trending.
Yeah, but Bregman's going in the 3rd or 4th round
for sure. Way different. I would take Bregman over Bryant, but they're both kind of in that same like StatCast does not love them if you want to buy into that.
Right. I mean, Bryant, you're getting the appropriate discount.
You are. Yeah, at pick 130, I think that's about that's a good spot for him.
Yeah.
A guy that I loved last year, and I'm willing to toss out 2020. One of those guys that I'm throwing away is Yuan Mankata. He started the year with COVID, ended up playing most of the year. Had 231 plate appearances, played in the playoffs, but he was a guy that said like halfway through that it was still bugging him. He was still fatigued. It still affected him. He hit 225 last year, 6 home runs, did not run at all. He had no stolen bases the whole year. I think there's probably a factor of, all the injury, all the COVID stuff. He also had some leg injuries that were bugging him at some point in the year. 2019 is a guy hit 315, hit 25 home runs, had 10 stolen bases, 559 plate appearances. And he was a guy that like the hard hit rate was really kind of trending the right way. It was up to 48% the year before, down to 33% last year. He had some K gains. He was back up to 31% last year. So all the like steps he was taking, I think why I really liked him was the progress he was making all kind of crashed. But I'm on him. He's 68 ADP last year, 86 right now this year. He's one guy for me. There's not everybody I'm willing to fully throw out 2020, but he's one guy where I'm tossing it out fully.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't even try a stolen base last year. Kind of speaks to the energy levels there. On one hand, though, 2019 sticks out like a sore thumb. It is the outlier. It's not if you're trying to look at like trend lines, 750, OPS is just it's not a terrible stat, but it's not the greatest stat, but it's a quick proxy.
Yep.
750, 750, 915, 705. I mean, which one's the outlier? It's 2019.
It is, unless you look at 2017, 2018, 2019 is like steps up, and then 2020 is just kind of a toss away. But you're right. 2019, especially batting average wise, 2019 sticks out, and that 406 BABIP sticks out too. Like that's not happening again. But
right.
He's 25. I love the talent. I like everything he was doing before last year. I think I'm sticking with it. I think at pick 86, I'm in on that.
I think so too. I think I prefer to pay for Bryant at his price than Mankata at his, but
okay.
Yeah, I think my projections kind of are in line with his ADP also. If he runs, that's the big thing. And I'm assuming he's going to run again. He gets his 8 to 10 stolen bases. That's what makes him much more valuable than Bryant. But yeah, and I'm kind of curious to see where he hits in the order too.
It's big because if they hit Eaton up at the top, Mankata's got to drop down, right?
Right. Somebody's got to drop. And yeah, Mankata spent almost all of his time at batting second last year. And you're right. If Eaton's hitting second, he's a great second hitter too. It's what he does. He's a pest. He gets on base. You know, that.
Because Abreu, Eloy, and Grandal are not moving out of 3, 4, 5, whatever order they're in, and when Grandal plays, and you've got Luis Robert, who, you know, if he starts well, may move up a little bit too. Probably starts the year hitting 7th, but yeah, it's if Eaton hits second, that does hurt Mankata.
Yeah, and you got an old school manager now, Tony La Russa. I don't know how that squares with everything either, but
I think that squares for Adam Eaton hitting second, if we're being honest.
I think so too.
Doesn't that feel like perfect Tony La Russa two-hitter?
Here's one other thing. This is I talked about this with the Jays. I was talking on Twitter about Rowdy Tellez and how left-handed the Jays are. Well, the White Sox also happen to be pretty right-handed. I mean, did I say how left-handed the Jays are? How right-handed the Jays are, and how Tellez is valuable because he's got that left-handedness. So Grandal's a switch hitter, but Abreu, Madrigal, Anderson, Eloy, Robert, they're all right-handed hitters. Eaton's a lefty, so Eaton's probably going to bat high in the lineup.
Although Mankata's a switch hitter, so he could slot in. He could do that same thing.
That's true. Yeah. Okay. Never mind. That doesn't. You're right. Strike that.
But I think you're
right.
Edit.
No.
I think Adam Eaton will. I think he'll start out hitting second, just because that feels very. And I mean, he's been a very good OBP guy in his career. He was not last year. He was actually terrible last year, but 365, 394, 393 the years before that. He's got a history of getting on base.
Yeah, he does.
A guy that has changed teams also, we got a lot of Cubs here. Cubs to Nationals is Kyle Schwarber. He was a guy that I missed on last year. Full admission there. I love Schwarber at the price last year. It did not work. He was ADP was 117 last year. It's now 190. He hit 188 last year. Did homer, though. He had 11 home runs. He only had 24 RBIs, but 224 plate appearances. Year before, he was 38 home runs, 92 RBIs. The thing I like with Schwarber going this year is the hard hit rate's still really good. The barrel rate's still really good. He still hit the ball really hard. Strikeout rate's reversed, though. He made some steps up, kind of like Mankata with 2017, 2018, 2019, like good steps forward. Jumped back to 29.5% last year. Granted, that was only a 60-game sample, but that's obviously the issue there. If he can drop that back down, I really like him. If not, the batting average is going to be a problem. He's not fast, not beating out hits. But at pick 190, I'm fully back in.
Yeah, me too. I don't think there's that much controversial about this one. Good ballpark, good spot in the order behind Soto.
Yeah.
He does have to play the field.
Three guys that get on base in front of him. It's not just Soto. There's 3 guys that get on base in front of him. It's a good spot to be.
Yeah. Checking one thing here. He played 48 games in the outfield last year, so yeah, he's fine there too. For some reason, I thought someone said that he was more of a DH last year, but that's not true. He played more outfield than DH.
The weird thing with Schwarber is he hit a ton of ground balls last year. It was a 38% ground ball in 2019, 50.8% last year. Launch angle was 12 degrees over the last 3 years. It was 8.8 last year. Like, very strange. And I think that's a 2-month thing. Like, who knows? I mean, I don't think he's suddenly become a ground ball guy, but he's someone that gets shifted, and the ground balls are going to be really bad for his batting average. He's one of those guys that you do not want a ton of ground balls to the right side. I don't know. I just love the lineup spot. I love the place to hit. I think it works really well. And that's what's that? That's the end of the 12th round. I'm all in on that if I need some pop there.
There's something about the Cubs last year. They just collectively slumped.
They did.
I think they brought each other down. It's like seeing somebody yawn and you start yawning.
Don't do that. I don't want to start yawning.
I've been stifling all podcasts, and it's not about the company. It's just timing.
I was going to say, I'm not being insulted at all. Don't worry. A couple more guys, and then I'll let you get out of here. Going to Oakland, Frankie Montas is a guy that you and I benefited greatly from in 2019. I remember sitting with you in the Italy talking about pitchers that morning before, and we're like, you know what, any out to the 20th round, you got to grab Montas. All the reports about the splitter are great. They threw up a 2.63 ERA, was huge for us. Then he got suspended, which was not so good for us. 5.6 ERA last year, 1.51 WHIP. He was not good, frankly. He came in the season as the ace and left the season as definitely not the ace. You look at the K rate was about the same. The walk rate jumped a little bit, so that's a little bit of concern. Home runs were a big issue. Barrel rate doubled, also an issue there. Hard hit rate was not bad, but the barrel rate doubling is not good. Velocity dipped a bit, but he's still throwing 96, so I don't think that's a concern. My big concern with Montas is what I liked about him so much the year before was that the K rate was good. Not a huge guy, but like solid, 25%. But he was a huge ground ball guy too, and I love the combo of ground balls and strikeouts. Last year, he was 36% ground ball guy. He was 49% last year. The splitter was not as effective as it was the year before. ADP right now is 155. Last year, it was 72. He was very, very much a darling last year. Wasn't good last year. He started out really well. He has gave up 4 runs the first 4 starts. Then he went 9, 4, 5 his next 3 starts. Had another 4 and a 5 in there. He was really bad after that first stretch.
If you don't see his final start of the year, where he strikes out 13 and 6 shutout innings against the Mariners, how low does ADP drop from what it is even now? I mean, he had a 6.32 ERA, and then he dropped all the way to a 5.60. So could have been way worse.
It could have been. It was just like he had that start against Arizona where he just could not get anybody out. He gave up 9 runs in 1 2/3 and walked 4. It was just like it was one of those starts. You're like, all right, well, that was just. He had nothing, but didn't do anything with it. And then came back and pitched 8 innings. The next 2 starts, gave up 9 runs. It was rough in the middle. I want to like him more than I do, but I'm a little bit worried that splitter is key to his whole arsenal, and it wasn't very effective last year.
And it's like someone discovered that maybe he was tipping or something like that, and it was like Independence Day where everybody sent out the message in Morse code. Here's how you beat Montas. Here's how you see a splitter coming or something like that. Now, what's weird is, and I have to scroll down and figure this out a little bit, but his first 4 starts, were cruising along. August 8th was his 4th start against Houston, 7 shutout innings. That Arizona start was 10 days later. What happened? Do you remember?
I think that was when the A's had their COVID delay. Because remember they played that one game against Houston. I think they missed the next 2 or 3, and then they sat the next series and they went to Arizona. I think is where it was.
Yeah, I think you're right. I see some notes about a back injury too. Before that, he got scratched with back tightness. That's the other thing.
Okay.
So, I mean, maybe that was bothering him during that start, after that start, other starts again. I mean, that could explain a lot too.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a stark difference between those first 4 and everywhere else. That it could be that he just never was fully healthy again too. I mean, that's a big factor.
Yeah, he wasn't good against the Astros in the ALDS.
By the way, I take it back. The start that I was looking at was August 29th and September 8th was the COVID stuff. So the one you're talking about, the back, you had the right with the back. It was
tightness. The back.
Yeah, Mengden tested positive for COVID in September 3rd.
Yep. And so he went August 29th to September 8th. So he had another gap there, but he was fine after that gap. Yeah, I mean, he's tough, especially because his bread and butter was so bad. That's the thing that, the splitter was dominant, and then last year was no problem.
And he didn't have to throw it a ton. It was only 18% in 2019, but the fact that it was there and so good, it just helped his other pitches. I mean, his sinker, which he throws most of the time, got killed last year. 617 slugging percentage, and it was just, he got smoked. And I don't know if guys were, maybe something you said, like they were tipping it, guys were laying off and they knew what to hit, and he throws that hard sinker a lot. It's 95.5 miles an hour. Should be a really good pitch, but he wasn't getting ground balls. It wasn't getting strikeouts. The whiff rate only was 20%. Mm-hmm. There's enough that I like, but there's a lot I don't like, and I wish his ADP had fallen a little bit more. I don't know if in the 10th, 11th round I'm quite there yet.
Yeah, I get it, but then again, I mean, he's such a wild card. I mean, he could be the type of guy that could win leagues
for sure.
I'm trying to look at some of the names around him.
Before you do that, do you worry at all with how good he was? Then he had the PED stuff and came back. It wasn't good. Is that factoring at all for you? Okay.
Of course.
Has to a little bit, right?
I mean, it's only human to think so. I mean, think that that's part of the issue. I'm looking at starting pitchers after him. Herman Marquez can't use in a home park. I mean, but maybe he gets dealt. Marco Gonzalez or Frankie Montas? Montas, snap call. Are you anti-Gonzalez, or are you just...
I'm not. I just think the upside on Montas is a significant step up.
Yeah. I mean...
Gonzalez is... I mean, it probably depends what you have and how risky your front guys are, but...
Yeah.
I think I'd go Montas.
Gonzalez was so good, though. I mean,
he was really good.
And he struck people out, too. That's the thing people don't realize. Tyler Malley is the next starting pitcher, but that's like almost 20 spots below. It's an interesting stretch that there's not that many starting pitchers getting taken in this spot.
Gonzalez had a 2.5% walk rate. Jeez.
Yeah. You might not snap that call.
Yeah, I may have been a little too snappy with that.
Yeah. Other starters: Tyler Malley, David Price, Mike Soroka. I mean, they're all significant question marks here.
You're right. I think what we're seeing is, it used to be like 10th, 11th, 12th round we like starters, and I think there's gonna be a lot of guys. Any starter with any kind of you really, really like is going earlier than normal. Like, I used to love this range for starting pitchers, and I think that's changed over the last couple of years. I think it's just anybody that people like go 7th, 8th round instead of 10th, 11th, what they used to do.
Yeah, I think it's more commonplace to find the factors that people like it, and it's all dealing with strikeouts and swing and miss and things like that. Other pitchers: Corey Kluber, Dallas Keuchel, Chris Bassett, Tristan McKenzie, Aaron Savali. Yeah. I hesitant to find people I like better than him there.
So what you're telling me is get 3 starting pitchers in the first 9 rounds or so?
9 or 10 rounds, yeah.
8 rounds, and somewhere in there, yeah.
By the way, everybody else sees that and is pushing their guys up too.
Sure. I mean, it's just, you mentioned those names. It's just, you're still talking 10th, 11th, and there's good hitters in that range too. Like, it's just, it's hard to take one of those pitchers, but you gotta take arms. But you're right. I think as you look at the player pool, and it's really good to do that, the pitching dries up really fast.
Yeah, I think you're right about the 9th round, because before him, the next starting pitcher is 143 is Sandy Alcantara. I like him.
And he's going to get pushed up in that 9th round, 8th round too.
Yep. I think especially if we get to the main, whether it's live or online, both, it's going to be breathtaking.
Yeah, it really is. You're drafting online?
90% are going to be online. I haven't been vaccinated yet, and I'm doing some traveling for my parents, and that's scary enough as it is. Just not the traveling part, but that I could expose my parents to anything. I want to kind of lessen my footprint, so I probably will do it online.
Yeah, I think I am too. I just think the fun of Vegas is maybe a little muted right now too, which is tough. Yeah. 2 other guys I wanted to ask you about before I let you get out of here. First is an offensive player, is Joey Gallo. 127 ADP last year. Right now it's 164. He had a $181 last year, and we talked about you talked about the outlier with Mankata's batting average. The 2019 Joey Gallo sticks out big time. We go 209, 206, 253, 181. I know a lot of people thought maybe he had found something last year. The strikeout rate was 35%. That was a drop from 2019, believe it or not. Swinging strike rate dropped. It was 15.8%, which is the best of his career. But he is a ton of swing and miss. But 40 plus home runs in 2017, 2018. I know he only played 70 games in 2019, but had 22 home runs. What the heck do you do? Like, how much of a batting average base and power problem do you have to take Gallo in the 12th? I guess it'd be the 11th, 12th round.
I mean, it's really about roster build.
It has to be extreme roster build, right? Like, you have to have the perfect fit for him, I think.
And because there's an overall component, you can't just punt average. If you're just playing just your league, it'd be one thing. I mean, you really have to have a pretty high batting average before you make that pick, and you've been sacrificing power to get there. Now, those 2 things aren't mutually exclusive. In fact, that often is the case. But you really got to be focusing on batting average in the first 7, in your first 3 or 4 hitters, because I mean, he just crushes that batting average. And because guys after him also are going to be compromised more often than not. Any sort of power you find after him is also going to be poor batting average too.
It's a good point. It's a really good point. You take him in the 11th round. It's not like you're finding a ton of really great batting average guys the rest of the way. I mean, you don't find those guys.
I mean, I think maybe one idea is you're crushing it with power, and then you focus on batting average guys later, so you don't have to worry about the power later. You're just trying to get.
You could do that.
Yeah, I think that's about the only way you're going to end up with him. I mean, he's not going to get you much speed.
The 30 home run guys later usually come with a black eye in batting average.
Yep, and risk of relapse in terms of power or playing time or something like that. Yeah.
And you look in that range at first base, like if I get in there and I need anything, I'm going to take Josh Bell or Rhys Hoskins pretty easily over him, I think.
Yeah, he's outfield though.
Oh, you're right. I always think of Gallo's first base. You're right. He is outfield.
Center field sometimes too, although not anymore because of Taveras. But
yeah, outfield around there is a little tougher. You've got Santander, Victor Robles, Ian Happ, then Gallo, then you jump way down to like Trey Mancini, Nick Solak, I guess, in there because he's out.
Give me Happ every day over Gallo.
I take Happ every day too. I like that one actually.
Yeah.
What about? I'm going to sneak one more guy in here, even though I know you're tired and yawning at me.
I'm stifling yawns at you. I'm not yawning. Stifling.
Someone that was mentioned also on Twitter, since I was scrolling down outfield. Where do you fall on Max Kepler off the 228 season?
I like Max Kepler. I don't know. Maybe the thing that hurt him last year is, in 2019 he seemed like he beat his platoon disadvantage. He was starting to hit lefties okay, and then last year he was just helpless against them.
Yeah, he hit 128 with no home runs and no runs. He had 6 hits in 47 at bats against lefties. Yeah, it was not good.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in a score sheet league or you're in a Stratomatic league, you got to bench him against lefties.
You talk about OPS. I'm just throwing out there because it's an easy number. But he had a 904 OPS against righties. I mean, he was really good against righties. So I think you're right. I think that platoon thing is a big note. But as we know with managers, at some point they're going to be like, screw it, and they're going to just sit him against lefties.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of lefties in the division. I can't.
Matthew Boyd.
Maybe Skubal lefty Bubik also. Forget.
Yes. Tarek Skubal's lefty. I think Chris Bubik in Kansas City is a lefty.
Yeah.
You're right. There's not a lot.
Yeah. I mean, so that at least works in his favor. Well, the Royals have 3 lefties: Minor, Duffy, Bubic. So
and then you have Rondon and Dallas Keuchel in Chicago.
Yeah.
So maybe a few more than we thought.
But yeah, Carlos Rodon, he might not even make the rotation though.
That's a fair point, but I mean, the Indians are 4 righties, maybe 5 if Quantrill makes it. If it's Logan Allen's lefty, but it's tough. It's weird. It's going to be like this first 6 weeks for Kepler against lefties. Like if he finds it and he gets some hits, he's okay. They'll probably leave him in. But a 4 to 6 weeks bad starts against lefties, you got to think the platoon comes into factor. Not
really
just quickly.
Platoon, but also late inning replacement.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Yeah, you get a lefty reliever, they're just going to yank him and put someone else in there. Do they have a really good righty option there? I'm looking at their roster there. They really don't, because Jake Cave's lefty. Kirilloff, who's going to start in the minors, I think is lefty too, right? Yeah.
He might not start in the minors. They probably will for 2 weeks or something stupid like that. But
yeah, I think he's going to start. I thought there was a report today saying they think he's going to start in the minors.
Don't do that.
Well, I didn't do it.
No, I'm saying them. I mean, I know you didn't do it.
They just don't have anybody there that you're like, I guess they could play.
Brent Rooker?
And they can't like DH Garver and play Ryan Jeffers because they have Cruz at DH. They don't really have a great righty option there. So I think Kepler's got a little bit of a leash just for that factor, I guess.
Yeah. And if they're going to start Kirilloff in the minors, they're going to start Trevor Larnach in the minors too.
Yeah, I think they start.
He's lefty anyhow, so it doesn't matter. All right.
I'm scrolling down looking at their like AAA. There's not a righty that you're like really worried about coming in and taking time at all.
Yeah, unless it's player to be signed later from the free
which is certainly possible. But it had to be someone who could play the outfield because they can't sign the CJ Cron, Encarnacion, DH kind of guys, obviously. But
what about his teammate Mitch Garver?
Yeah, talk about a guy that like I was loving getting him. I think we got him in like the 8th and 9th round in Maine last year. I was excited. He had 2 home runs last year and hit 167. Strikeout rate is insane. He only played 23 games. He was hurt, but 45% strikeout rate. That's insane. That sticks out big time. Still hit the ball pretty hard. I think 2020 is probably a wash with him, but you want to talk about, guys whose 2019 stick out like a sore thumb. His is like the sorest of thumbs.
You're right. And sore is probably the operative term. He's a guy that they always try to keep well rested because he was somewhat fragile over his career. As soon as he gets a few more plate appearances, he breaks down the next year. I remember getting him in one of the mains. Like, can you believe they let me have him, Scott?
I remember thinking, like, I can't believe you got him like 30 picks after ADP. I was so excited for you, and it worked out really well. 2 home runs and 5 RBIs is a solid campaign.
He was on a Chris Bryant pace until the last 2 A's of the season.
There you go, and but that 31 home runs, like 2018, he played as many games, he had almost as many plate appearances, and hit 7 home runs. So like. I don't know how much yet do you buy into him actually turning it around and becoming a new player. I mean, hit the ball a ton in 2019, 15% barrel rate, 50% hard hit rate. Like, it all looked legit. I loved him going to 2020 where he went, and just I don't know if he was playing
hurt, and then he actually was finally put on the IL. I don't know. I think that might be an option. You're getting a discount. It's not a huge discount, but it's a discount. I'm trying to pull up where he's at 193, 196.
Oh, there you go. I had the whole thing, but yeah, you have a better date range there. I think you're still. That's not as far maybe as I thought it would go, but yeah, it's probably about. I'm looking at the catchers around. There's no catchers around him at all. Wow, there's really no catchers around him at all.
No, he's between tiers.
Oh my gosh, he really is. There's a Gary Sanchez 172, then Garver's 197. There's nobody else until you get to 250, like 240, 245 with Buster Posey.
Yeah, Buster Posey, Carson Kelly, Jorge Alfaro.
None of them have any warts on them, do they?
Yadi Molina, who's great. All right.
So last guy I wanted to ask you about before we get out of here is one. It's more like is he just done? Like ADP 152 last year was on my fade list. So one guy actually got right on the fade list last year. ADP of 394 right now is Madison Bumgarner. 3.90 ERA in 2019. You and I talked extensively about the home and road splits last year and how good he was in San Francisco compared to everywhere else when he was with the Giants. Last year was a disaster. Only 4 to win innings, but a 6.5 ERA, a 1.5 or 1.44 WHIP. Hard hit rate. We talked about other guy. We talked about I think it was Corbin earlier, or no, it was Paddock earlier with the high hard hit rate. But 14.9% barrel rate for Bumgarner. Like, he turned every hitter into an absolute stud. Worst in Major League Baseball. If anybody that had 40 or more innings, that rate. Velocity fell 3 miles an hour, which I think is the big story here. He went from 91.4. He was already kind of dropping like at that bottom where you want him, and he was 88.4 last year. A 12-teamer, he might not even get drafted. A 15-teamer, he'll be like in the mid-20s. Do you even do it there?
No, I've got him at like 450. I need to see velocity. I mean, 3 miles an hour slower when he's already starting to see the downhill trend.
He can't pitch at 80.5.
No, it
doesn't work. It just doesn't work. I mean,
if I see him at 90.5, gets like 2 out of those 3 miles back. Yeah. Okay, sure. But until then, and I need to see it. You know, I need to see the report at least, I should say. I probably won't necessarily have my gun handy there to time him, but
there'll be games on TV.
Yeah. I'll time it with my sundial while watching TV.
I'm passing on the attending spring training this year too. They are selling tickets, but I'm passing on that one too.
Yeah, I'm probably doing the same. Again,
it's hard for me to justify sitting there for games that don't matter. Usually I love it and I can walk around, and you're not gonna be able to walk around the park, which is like my favorite part of spring training, and going to get a beer and go sit in the outfield and then change seats. You can't do that. It's just it doesn't hold the appeal for me anymore.
Yeah, I know that, and if I got vaccinated, it'd all be different. But
yeah, you and me both. I agree.
Yeah, I see it. But anyhow, getting back to Mad Bum, yeah, I'm not there.
I don't think I am either. I mean, the price is essentially free. You could draft him, and you could put him on the bench if he looks bad the first couple of starts. You draft him. I wouldn't be fully opposed to that, but yeah. And at that point, you're taking darts anyway, so maybe it's worth it. But there's too much missing here. I need to see some, like you. I like to see some stuff in spring training that makes it look like he's back, and I just don't think it's there.
Yeah, I think at cost or low end of range in a best ball, maybe, where I don't have to try to time the market.
Yeah, you figure he maybe gets crafty and finds his way through some good 6-inning starts during the course of the year. Right. I can see that. Yeah, I just don't think I could. I think the problem is the danger for like big blowups is real, especially if the velocity's not back, and you don't want to have to try and time that.
Yeah, enhanced by a bullpen that seems kind of shaky too behind him. So inherited runners will probably score.
I think Joakim Soria is going to close them there.
Maybe so.
I think those the Stefan Crichton shares might not have much of a value as we hoped earlier this draft season.
Yeah, I downgraded him after that Soria signing too.
Yeah, I don't love Soria as an A's fan. Watching him was never enjoyable. He felt like he got outs, but it always came with like guys on base or something. Like it never felt like it was clean. His WHIP last year was 1.25, so it wasn't really bad, but he walked a lot of guys. Walker was over 10%. It never felt like he came in and just like you felt good about that inning when he came in.
I agree.
which I don't want from a closer. He's watching closers stressful enough as it is.
Yeah, it's funny though. He's saved a lot of games in his career. It's not
He
like
has.
he's new. It's been a while.
223 saves. That's he has 40 save years, but last 40 save year was 11 years ago. That's why that's a hell of a career though.
Yeah, he's kind of this generation's Octavio Dotel.
Yeah, he's probably a longer, better career than that, right?
Dotel was awesome for a while.
He was really good for a while in Houston.
Yeah,
he was not so good when he joined the A's. We tend to do that to pitchers.
Yeah.
So, cool. Well, thanks everybody for listening. Jeff, anybody else that you want to talk about? Anything else on your mind?
No, I think we hit up most of them. If we didn't get your question, well, we'll hit them up next week. And I'm sure there'll be plenty more opportunities. That's a good thing. And I'll try to respond individually on Twitter as well.
Yeah, and there were a couple of guys. There was an Oscar Mercado question. We talked about him last week. So if you go back and listen to last week, we talked about him as the players past 300. So we did discuss him. So that's why I left him out. Jeff, you and I are joining Rob DiPietro on the Pull Hitter podcast tomorrow night. I don't know when that's going to be dropped. Probably the next day, but I'm looking forward to that. Yep. Should be fun. And then next week you are out. I'm going to have a special guest, the Roto Gut himself, Vlad Sedler, will be hosting with me next week. So
back-to-back appearances for him. I'm having him on Thursday too.
Oh, look at that! Vlad makes the circuit in February, March. He's very good at getting out there. So
yes,
he
is.
He's good.
He's very good too. I'm going to be Dodger centric with him on Thursday, just for what it's worth.
I think we're gonna do fades next week with Vlad. I think that's what we're gonna do, but I have to confirm that with him. I think we're gonna kind of talk about early, maybe like first 10-round fade kind of guys that we are not drafting. So that's my goal for next week. But look forward to having Vlad. Vlad's a good friend, so always good to talk about that. Safe travels to you, Jeff. We'll be back with you in 2 weeks, but you'll be on twice this week. You have Vlad this week, and you're with Fred again on Tuesday, right?
Yep, that's right. And then and we're gonna do a little Royals breakdown. I think it's gonna be our dive. Maybe Royals and White Sox.
Royals is an interesting one. I like it. And
then a week from Thursday, I got Randy Wilkins, who's a really good filmmaker, also a big Yankee talker. So we'll cover that. So I'm excited about that too. Trying to book more podcast appearances in advance too.
Very nice. Cool. Well, thanks everyone for listening. As always the nice comments we see on Twitter, always appreciated too. You want to follow Jeff on Twitter? He's at Jeff_Erickson. I am at Scott Jenstad. Jenstad is Jenstad. Other than that, I will be back at you next week with the special guest, Vlad Sedler. We're back with Jeff in 2 weeks. Hope everybody has a great week and take care.
Please like our video and subscribe to RotoWire. Then go to rotowire.com/pod for a free 10-day trial.